All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Geopolitics with your host, Tone Vase. It's been a really long time since I've done one of these, and a lot of people have been asking me for an update on the Russia Ukraine situation. I have been keeping up with what is going on over on that front. I would love for this conflict to end for multiple reasons. Oh, sorry, I have to mute the thing. For many, many reasons. Obviously, I don't want any more lives getting killed, and I don't want to spend, an hour to 2 hours a day following up on it. Right? Like, hopefully, there will be peace in the world someday. But the situation is getting, well, crazier to say the least. Let's go to screen share. Where do we even begin? Let's just go straight to the front line and talk about the disaster that is happening, to the Ukrainians in Donbass. Here we go. All right. So let me see. How many viewers do we even have? And we are live streaming. This should also be live streaming on Twitter because now I'm using Restream for this. I still got to, get better at live streaming and stuff. Let me take a look at the live chat. All right. It's hard, Brian. Thanks, guys. I got my moderators. Shoot over any questions into our Telegram group for questions. Okay. So I know it sounds like the news will make it sound like Russia is moving very, very slow. And that is true. And Putin is probably getting, a little bit of backlash. Like, why is everything happening so slow? And because Russia is moving so slow, the West sees it as Russian military as weak. But that is, I don't know, like that's either the United States knows that the Russian military is strong and they are just, lying because to the West, perception of reality is more important than actual reality on the ground. However, I do not rule out the possibility that the United States, intelligence agencies and the military are actually incompetent, and they honestly believe that the Russian military is weak, and that is why they are moving so slow. I know it's a little bit of a contradiction because the U.S. Military and intelligence agencies are, overthrowing governments all around the world and causing all kinds of havoc. But that's mostly through the NGOs and their control of the media and the brainwashing of people in other countries. But in the Ukraine situation, this. I know it's weird when I say it, but this area of Pokrovsk has been the most fortified Ukrainian city, holding back the Russians from literally walking to the river with almost no resistance. Like this right here, this was the biggest stronghold. Well, the current biggest stronghold. Because prior to this being the biggest stronghold, holding back the Russians from walking to the river with very little resistance, prior to that, it was Avdiivka. And if you look, where is Avdiivka? Shit. I should be better at this by now. But I only do these streams like once every 2 or 3 months. I'm having trouble finding Avdiivka, and it's not like it's a Google map, so it's a little harder to search. And prior to Avdiivka, it was Bakhmut, which I also can't find. There it is. There's Bakhmut. Okay. So Bakhmut was like a huge Ukrainian stronghold. And once Bakhmut fell, the Russians were able to quickly move way past that. And now, and then after Bakhmut, it was Avdiivka, which should be below Bakhmut, somewhere. Man. And also the names of the cities change too. Like when Russia takes over some of these cities, they rename it back to what it used to be called before the Ukrainians changed it from what it was called before that. So it's also possible that I can't find Avdiivka because it was, oh, there it is, found it, because it was renamed, but it hasn't been renamed. There's Avdiivka, right? So Bakhmut fell first, then Russia moved most of their resources to take down Avdiivka. And once Avdiivka fell, Russia was able to move very, very swiftly. And now Pokrovsk is like literally the last major city in Donbass. Now, Donbass is the combination of Luhansk, which is the region up here, that Russia has almost completely taken, just got a little bit of sliver here, and Donetsk, which is this region over here, and Russia has taken about maybe 60%. That's actually the picture in this video, of how much percentage of these regions Russia has taken. I'm forgetting about Ugledar. No, I'm not forgetting about Ugledar. It's just that I personally don't think Ugledar is as important as Pokrovsk is right now, and Avdiivka before that, and Bakhmut before that. So Ugledar, to me, I know these are in the past. Yes, Ugledar is another important area that Russia is also going to be taking. So what you can see it right here in this map, that there are thousands of Ukrainians and they're literally stuck here. They have two choices. They can surrender or they can die. That's literally what's going to happen. All attempts for Ukrainians to get these soldiers out of here so they can then be, useful in defending another area, they're just losing more and more people trying to get these people out. This is literally a kill corridor because this is such a small corridor that you may be able to crawl at night and avoid getting killed if you're getting out of here. But drones will get you, and drones have infrared. They're basically done. And it's only a matter of time before all of this goes completely red. And this is now 3 years that I've been covering. Oh, wow. There's like automatic. I wonder if I can turn that off because this is a different channel. I'm just using the same restream. Yeah, guys, all my trading content is on a different YouTube channel. That is not technically my YouTube channel. And yeah, there's some automatic code in this restream that I'm using for Black Box. Well, you can click on it. It's not scammy or anything, but there are some automatic messages going out as me, just so you know. I just saw that myself. Do civilians still live in these areas? The answer is no. They're not. I mean, it's possible that civilians do live in these areas, but all civilians have been advised to get the fuck out of these areas, right? So basically, anywhere near the front line, all civilians have been advised to leave and move, and the Ukrainian government is supposed to use its resources to get these civilians out of those areas. However, what I'm about to say may be controversial, but besides the fact that the Ukrainian government is one of the most corrupt governments in the world, so them having financial resources to move the civilians out of the way and them actually using these resources to move the civilians out the way are completely different things. In addition, it is there is zero advantage to the Ukrainian government to move the civilians out the way, because for the Ukrainian government, this is more of a propaganda war to make Russia look as evil as possible in order to get the West to give it more weapons and more money. So the more Ukrainian civilians die, the better it is for the Ukrainian government. It is not good for the Russian government. Remember, the more Ukrainian civilians Russians kill, the worse it is for Russia. So there is zero advantage to Russia because Russia is already demonized in the Western media, which is most of the world's media. So Russia killing Ukrainian civilians is a disaster that they would want to avoid on multiple fronts. However, for Ukraine, losing their civilians, if they get killed by Russia, is a major advantage because they get to play the card in the media that Russia is killing Ukrainian civilians. And that's why the United States needs to give them Tomahawk missiles, which could be nuclear armed, to aim and hit Moscow to kill Russian civilians and potentially create some kind of an uprising in Russia that would overthrow Putin, and that would stop all their problems, which is a ridiculous idea to begin with. Does Russia even care about the media? Well, they do care about the media because, they care about the media because the media brainwashes populations. And, this is how World War II basically started, right? Like, how do you get the entire country of Germany to be to be Nazis, right? So it's propaganda. And, Russia wants to avoid something like every citizen of Europe somehow getting brainwashed to put on a uniform and go fight Russia. That's not to Russian advantage either. That's just going to lead to nuclear war. But Russia does care about the media. There's not much they can do about the media. But the one thing they can do, notice how there is very little in the news about Russia targeting Ukrainian civilians, right? Because they just don't have any proof. They can say it, but there's very little proof that Russia attacked Ukrainian civilians. Just like when Ukraine was saying, Putin kidnapped 10,000 children, and that's why there is a international arrest warrant out on Putin for, kidnapping 10,000 children. When Ukraine was forced to provide a list of the names of the children, they were only able to provide a list of 300 children. And when these children were tracked down, more than half of them were found safe and sound in Europe. Again, it does matter. Well, sort of, right? Okay, I gotta, maybe I should display some comments. Ukraine doesn't think of them. Oh, wow. This looks so different than on other streams. Ukraine doesn't think of them as their people. They think of them as Russians. Well, yes and no. So the people that, the closer you live to the Russian border, the more Russian you were. So all of the Russians that were living in this area, they're either still living in this area, like in Mariupol, which is the city that was rebuilt already, or these people have already moved to Russia, or they're safely behind the contact line. So at this point, there is very few Russians living in these regions. And if there are Russians living in these regions, they keep their mouth shut. They would have had to learn to speak Ukrainian at some point. Because if you speak Russian in Ukraine right now, you could literally, I don't know what's going to happen to you, but the Russian language is illegal in Ukraine. Keep that in mind, guys. The Russian language is illegal in Ukraine. It is the only country in the world where a language is illegal. Make that, just think about that logically, right? um, uh, like Hebrew is not illegal in Gaza, and Arabic is not illegal in Israel. But somehow Russian language, which every Ukrainian knows how to speak, by the way, is illegal in Ukraine, which is like a violation of all sorts of international treaties on like human rights. For the record, yes, I've lost all my Bitcoin. What does it mean if a city falls? It just means that Russia has control of that part of the map, basically. If a city falls, that means Russia has taken it over. Now, for those of you that haven't been here in a while, someone is saying Russia has already... Is this going to display? Russia had already won pretty much. It's a matter of time. No, I mean, like, we can't really... How do you define a win? I mean, Russia lost maybe 200,000-300,000 people in this military conflict. That's not a win. Russia now has a hostile neighbor on their north border, Finland. This used to be, a nice, peaceful border with low-level checkpoints, and Finland was a neutral country that has now joined NATO. So that's not a win for Russia. Russia has basically lost their ability to do commerce with Europe. That's not a win for Russia. I mean, it's Russia lost a lot of ease of international travel for their citizens. That's not a win for Russia. I mean, how do you define win? Russia has will have when this is over, they'll have a lot more security on their southwestern border, and I don't think Russia was ever really interested in turning Ukraine into rubble and creating a refugee crisis. By the way, no one talks about that more Ukrainians have fled into Russia than into any other country. So I would say maybe 40% of all Ukrainians fled to Russia, and 60% of all Ukrainians that fled to the West, fled to other parts of the world. All right. So if we look at the Institute of the Study of War, which is a Western propaganda piece, even they are admitting that Pokrovsk is basically fallen and this cauldron is about to completely close. So keep that in mind. Now, if you're curious, again, a lot of you guys have followed me. This is a language map of Ukraine. I know it's a little old. This is 20 years old, but languages didn't change much in 20 years. So you can see how 92% of the people in East Ukraine spoke Russian. So this is predominantly Russian. This doesn't mean that 92% of the people know how to speak Russian. This means that Russian was spoken 92% of the time in this region because everyone knew how to speak Russian. It's just that Russian was dominating with 92%. Over here in the South, Russian was dominating 84%. In Crimea, it was like 99%. In the center, it's more like Russian was dominating 60%. Kiev is right here in the center as well. This is the center region. And this was Ukrainian was spoken 75% of the time. So Russian was only spoken about 25%. And in the West, Russian was spoken about 5%. But even in the West, I would say 85% of the people that live here know how to speak Russian. So if you go to this area, I don't know how to speak Ukrainian. I somewhat understand it, but I don't know how to speak it. But if I went here and I was speaking in Russian, everybody would understand me, like almost every single person. Maybe someone under the age of 20 may not, but anyone over the age of 30 would. And in the center here, anyone over the age of 15 or 20 would be able to speak Russian. And the further you go east, over here, people didn't even know how to speak Ukrainian, basically. All right, looking at your area, guys. Oh, Cora, no, I agree. 99% of them know how to speak Russian, but in the West, Russian wasn't, popular to speak because they like the further west you go, the more these people hate Russia, and the more east you go, the more these people really don't like West Ukrainians, and the more west you go, the more they don't like East Ukrainians, and the more east you go, the more they don't like West Ukrainians. What's happening in Ukraine is more of a civil war than Russia invading Ukraine. Ukraine is someone in the comments is saying Ukrainian armed forces speak Russian to each other to make sure that everyone can understand what's going on. That is probably true. Like, I can't say that this is definitely true, but it would make sense to me as to why the Ukrainian forces would actually be speaking Ukrainian to each other. Not to mention, I'm pretty sure none of their user manuals, how to use the weapons, are written in Ukrainian. They're probably all written in Russian. So, yes, that is probably true. Okay, so in this video description, there is a link to this document. I wrote this document. It's 20 pages, and it took me like over a year to write it. And it explains all the root causes of the Russia-Ukraine crisis, basically. And there are several reasons for it, and I put them in order of how important they were. The NATO expansion to the east is number one. I'm not going to get into them today. Reason number two is the secession war for Donbass. This is basically the civil war situation. Russian military came in to protect the Russian natives in Ukraine. And it's not like it was, 1,000 natives. It's literally more than a quarter of the country is Russian natives. And this is why a pro-Russian president has always been democratically elected in Ukraine until Americans overthrew that democratically elected president and installed a Western puppet. And they've always had a Western puppet. Oh, and Zelensky is definitely a Western puppet. And it's really disappointing because, remember, Zelensky ran on a platform that he would, broker peace with Russia and not lead it to war. And hence, Zelensky was elected with a 73% majority on the fact that he was not going to allow Russia and Ukraine to be in a military conflict, and yet here we are. There is a massive Nazi problem in Ukraine. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And this is very thoroughly documented, not by Russian media, but this is very thoroughly documented by Western media back when they used to hate the Nazis, which is, I would say, around 2016, the narrative changed to where they realized that they can't talk badly about the Ukrainian Nazis anymore, because now they're officially part of the Ukrainian military, and therefore all of the Western media coverage of how bad the Nazi problem was in Ukraine pre-2016 has been washed under the table. But a lot of these links are, they're archived links in the Wayback Machine. Like, some of them have been taken down. A lot of research went into here. Here, Ukrainian former human rights chief admits promoting fake news to convince West to send more arms. Oh no, this is different. But this is not a Nazi article, but there's plenty of them. I tried to. I think a lot of them are linked straight to. I mean, you have the title, right? So you can find it. How the CIA protected Nazi murderers is from The Independent. Again, Western media, but you have to look at the dates. This is 2010. So you're not going to see anything in the Western media about the Nazi problem in Ukraine starting around 2016. So even after the coup in Ukraine, there were still some, Western media that were covering the Nazi situation. But then around 2016, it stopped. Completely stopped. And you have to, here's something from 2021. Here, 2018. I think it was the most recent one. I'm curious. I doubt this is, this is Time Magazine. Interesting. So Time Magazine even covered the Nazi problem in 21. And Reuters covered the Nazi problem in 2018. But it was taken down, and that's why I had to go to the web archive. So if the link only takes you to the web archive, that means it's possible that Reuters has taken it down, or I am assuming they would take it down. So this is Reuters, Ukraine's neo-Nazi problem. So yeah, don't let anybody tell you. I mean, it's not a main reason for the conflict. I give it a 5% reason for the conflict, but it's a real problem. This is one of the reasons why I never wanted to visit West Ukraine. I heard great things about West Ukraine, but when I was spending time in Ukraine spent a bunch of time in Ukraine in 2016 and 17. Oh, even 2019 actually as well. I never had a desire to go to West Ukraine because that's where this problem mostly existed. But yeah, that's why I've never visited West Ukraine. I knew about this problem. And then there was Crimea and the no fresh water in Crimea, which Russia annexed in 2014. And then the more recent reason, the CIA and biolabs, we only found out about this more recently in 2024 when the New York Times, released the information. And this is probably the most interesting one, and that is the oil and gas pipelines. And this is a rabbit hole you may or may not want to go down, but this ended up being my longest section. All right. What else should we cover? Are my moderators shooting me any questions in the Q&A chat? Doesn't look like it. All right, let me look at your live chat then. Let me back up a bit. East Europe hates Russia as well. Yeah, probably. But remember, all of Europe is controlled by Western media, which is controlled by US media, right? It's very easy to hate a country when for the last 20 to 30 years, you've been conditioned through Western propaganda media to hate Russians. It's not hard to understand why Europe and Europe hates Russia so much. I mean, Germany hates Russia so much that they allowed the United States to blow up their pipeline for cheap gas from Russia, and they haven't said shit about it. Do we just draw the lines as they are now with the war? No, you can't end the war on current lines. Russia has made it very clear that that is not going to happen. So they don't speak English in Ukraine. They speak some English in Ukraine. Again, we have to talk timeline, right? So in the year 2000, there was probably nobody speaking English in Ukraine. And in the year 2000, I would say 100% of the Ukrainians spoke Russian. So it's 2000, right? We're going back 25 years. Ukraine is already an independent country for 10 years. So 10 years after Ukraine independence, I would say, I'm just guessing, I'm just spitballing numbers out, right? I would say 100% of the population speaks Russian. Maybe 60% of the population speaks Ukrainian. And maybe 5% of the population speaks English. You go forward 10 years to 2010. Now I would say 98% of the population speaks Russian. Maybe 80% of the population speaks Ukrainian. And maybe 15 or 20% of the population can speak English. Fast forward to 2020, right before the conflict in Ukraine starts. I would say now it's like maybe 95% of the population speaks Russian. Maybe 85% of the population speaks Ukrainian. Remember, more people are speaking Russian in Ukraine than Ukrainian. Okay, 95% speak Russian, 85% speak Ukrainian. Most of them will speak both languages. And maybe 40% of the population will speak English. Okay, so right now today, it depends on what you call Ukraine. Right? If we go back to the map, right? Are we considering the parts in red Ukraine, or are we considering the parts in red Russia? Okay, so people over here in the red, this is never going back to Ukraine, guys. We have to be realistic here. Realistically, nothing in red will ever be Ukraine. Okay, there's 0% chance that the parts that are currently in red are going to be Ukraine. All right. In addition, let me open this. No, not this. This. No, not that either. This. There we go. Can you guys see this? Can you guys see this map? This is the election map. This is the 2010 presidential election. I don't think you guys can see this. Hold on. I need to change. Replace screen sharing. Okay. Now you can see it. Okay. So the parts in red on the other map, those parts will that will never be Ukraine again. Okay. Now, Crimea became Russia in 2014. So it's deep red. Now, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson. Okay. These regions, and if I go back to this, right? So these regions, so the additional 3% over here, this area, this is Donetsk, this area, this is Zaporozhye, and this is Kherson. Okay. Now, these areas are Russia according to the Russian constitution. Okay. Russia did a referendum in these regions, and the people in these regions voted to join Russia. I'm not here to debate whether the referendum was fair or people had gun to their heads. Okay. I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but from the Russian perspective, it doesn't matter. There is maybe a 1% chance that parts of these regions will be Ukraine again at some point in the future. Now, this is what I mean. If people think that Russia will stop on the current line of conflict, it's not possible because these regions are Russia according to the Russian constitution. It's kind of like if, I don't know, Canada was to take a part of Alaska and then America said, yeah, that's not a problem, right? See, that wouldn't be allowed. Like, America would not allow a part of their country to be controlled by another country. This is what it is here. These regions are now Russia according to the Russian constitution. Therefore, oops, not that. Where's my map? Oh, yeah, that was my map. Therefore, according to the Russian constitution, Ukraine is currently has invaded Russian territory. From the Russian perspective. From the Ukrainian perspective, Russia has invaded 4 parts of Ukraine, technically 5 parts. From the Ukrainian perspective, Russia has illegally invaded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts of Ukraine, 5 regions of Ukraine. From the Russian perspective, Ukraine is illegally occupying a part of Donetsk, a part of Zaporozhye, and a part of Kherson. And Russia has zero ability at this point to stop the conflict before they are in control of every inch of territory in these regions. That is according to the Russian constitution. Russia would be in violation of its constitution if it stopped the current conflict at the current front line. So it's not going to happen. That's reality of the situation. Profit2 Rules asks, how was the referendum held when parts of it was under Ukraine? That's a great question. I wasn't there to monitor the referendum, but when Russia first invaded Ukraine, they actually had more control of some of these regions, and then they pulled back. They pulled back for several reasons. One of the reasons is because Russia knew that they were going to be overextended and they were going to lose a lot of men when the war really broke out. And also, there's a lot of people that live in these regions as well, and they're predominantly Russians. So Dem says, so Ukraine invaded their own territory. Well, according to Russia, at the moment, Ukraine has invaded Russian territory, correct? Because these regions have voted to be Russia. So according to the Russian constitution, this is Russia. I don't know what you want me to say. You can disagree with it. You can write comments about how you disagree with it. You can laugh at it, but it doesn't change the fact that this area is Russia according to the Russian constitution, right? Like, again, there is opinions and then there is reality. So them writes, Russia can put in their constitution that all Ukraine is part of Russia. That does not make it so, unless Russia makes it so, right? Russia will eventually take every inch of this territory. And if Russia wants to take all of Ukraine, which would be stupid, they probably could. It would be very, very hard. It wouldn't be very popular in Russia. It would, I think, in my opinion, it would be stupid. But if the Russian government feels that it is necessary to take all of Ukraine for the survival of the Russian people, that is what they're going to try to do. I think it would be very difficult for them to succeed in that venture, which is why I don't believe they're going to do it. However, let's go back to this. As I've been saying for 3 years, once Russia takes these regions and Ukraine is not ready to surrender and agree to Russian terms, Russia will then focus on taking Odessa. And at this point, as I've been saying for years, I don't see how Russia is going to be able to end this conflict without taking Odessa. In addition, there is a very high probability that they will, once they take more of Kharkov, and they already have like 5% of Kharkov, they will have a referendum in Kharkov. And very likely that referendum will go to unite Kharkov with Russia. I don't see Russia holding a referendum in Kharkov or Mykolaiv or Odessa until they've captured enough territory and they know which way the votes are going to go. It is also very, very likely that Russia is going to take the Sumy region and the Chernihiv region. And here's what happens after that. Well, the reason they would take these regions is to create a bigger buffer zone for any additional drones or any other, shit that Ukraine would, or the West through Ukraine would fire into pre-2022, into pre-2022 Russia, basically, into Russia proper. And if they take these regions from a geographical perspective, from a geography perspective, it would be stupid for Russia to not also take Patlova, Dnipropetrovsk, and I don't even know this region. Kiro-Volhard. Not familiar with this much. And the reason they would take these three regions is to shorten the border. Shorten the border so that it's more manageable for security reasons with the troops. Because look at the distance, just measure this border and how much military would be needed to patrol this giant border versus this significantly shorter border. It's unlikely they will take another region, but if they have to, they will surround Kiev completely. They will probably even go a little bit further. They will go right up to the border of Kiev and use the river as the border, because the river, technically the river goes like this. That's the river. So that means that they're probably going to take this area as well and be right on Kiev's border. And that's how it's going to end. And I've been saying that this is very likely how it's going to end for several years. I know this looks completely crazy. because right now Russia can barely move towards this line here. But unless Ukraine actually commits to Russian terms, it is very possible this is going to go on another decade, and it's going to end like this. I think this is like the final scenario. I don't see Russia going any further than this. It is very, very likely that the conflict ends. Well, they'll probably take this. It is, it's hard to assume. Let's delete these. I would give it a 20% chance that the conflict ends only like this. Just a 20% chance that Russia does not go further, right? So let's do it the other way. There's 100% Russia is taking these regions, right? And I would say 80-90% chance Russia is going to go beyond these regions. Something like this. Now, they're definitely taking Dnipropetrovsk. Something like this, I give this an 80% probability that this is going to be the final line, somewhere in this vicinity. I mean, Russia doesn't really, they technically don't need, they only need this. They only need Odessa, right? So they technically only need the south area, and they technically only need Kharkiv. They do want Dnipropetrovsk, but there's a river here. So like this. And they'll probably take Poltava as well. So more likely, this whole thing ends like this. They don't need this, but they will take this. So it'll be something like this. But now there is a challenge, right? How do you annex half a region? If they do a referendum, the referendum is on the entire region. Unless Ukraine wants to, agree to terms to break up these regions into two and break Dnipropetrovsk into two. And then Russia would only take the east side of the river. And the river actually goes like this. So I think the river goes like that. The Dnieper River. We're going to check right now. Yeah, the river goes like that. Right. So I think they're going to take everything east of the river, and they really want Odessa. So they want Odessa, and they want to cut off Ukraine from any contact with the Black Sea. Andy says 6 months ago you were saying they take half of Ukraine. You again was wrong. I've been saying they're going to take half of Ukraine for 2 years. I'm only wrong if they stop, right? I don't understand how I can be wrong about something that is still yet to occur. I mean, if you consider Ukrainian lives not significant, then I agree. Russia has not taken anything significant except killing all Ukrainian military-age men. If that's not significant to you, then yes, Russia has not taken anything significant. Remember, the number one priority of Russia is to eliminate the military threat on their border. That is their number one priority. Taking land is not their number one priority. Taking land is a secondary priority. Their number one priority is to kill every Ukrainian soldier that is capable of putting on a uniform. And if taking the land is delayed because they're optimizing the saving as many Russian lives in order to kill maximum Ukrainian soldiers, and if it takes them 10 years to acquire the land, then it'll take 10 years for them to acquire the land. You are in a bigger rush than Russia is in this conflict. But you have to understand what the conflict is. No, of course Russia is losing military men, but the more military men Russia loses, the more likely they are to lose the military conflict. So Russian priority is to save as many Russian soldiers as possible and to kill as many Ukrainian soldiers as possible. That is what war is. War is not taking another country's territory. That is what Western media propaganda has brainwashed you into believing, that war is about taking land. War is not about taking land. War is about eliminating every military-age man fighting against you. And when that part of war is completed, the land is yours for the taking. When you understand how wars actually happen, you will then understand why Russia has not taken a lot of land. But you have a problem understanding that point. How is NATO getting stronger? NATO doesn't even have any more weapons left. NATO is running out of weapons. Russia is going to basically prove that NATO is weak. They're already doing it. Remember, joining NATO either increases the security of your country or it decreases the security of your country. Ukraine wanting to join NATO decreased the security of their country, because if Ukraine had stated that they had zero desire to join NATO and Ukraine would never join NATO, Russia probably never invades Ukraine. So Ukraine's security of having all of their territories was decreased by them trying to join NATO. Finland joined NATO. If Finland isn't careful, there will be no Finland. Russia has already publicly stated that they had peace with Finland being a neutral country, because Russia gave Finland back their country after Finland joined the Nazis to fight Russia in World War II. When Russia won World War II, they had control of what is now Finland. And Russia allowed the existence of Finland under a treaty that made Finland neutral. Now, the current politicians of Finland, along with the population of Finland, has been equally brainwashed by the same Western media that convinced Ukraine that they should join NATO. They have now convinced Finland that they should join NATO. And if Finland isn't careful, when Russia is done with Ukraine, Finland might find themselves the next Ukraine, because they were dumb enough to join NATO. So explain to me how joining NATO increased Finland's security, because Russia had zero intention of having a military conflict with Finland if Finland was going to stay neutral. But if Finland is no longer neutral, and if Russia feels that NATO is setting up military bases on the Russian border, they will invade Finland. And by the way, it will not be pretty, because unlike Ukrainians, which Russians consider brothers and sisters, Russians couldn't give two shits about the Finns. So they will carpet bomb Helsinki and not give a rat's ass about civilians in Finland, like they kind of care about the civilians in Ukraine. So Finland, good luck. Yeah, Latu. It was completely fucking stupid. Completely stupid for Finland to join NATO. They literally decreased the security of their country because now they're creating a hostile neighbor to their east. And America doesn't care if every Finn is dead. They couldn't care less. All America cares about is creating problems on the Russian border. You really think America and NATO care about Finnish lives? Come on, give me a break. Yes, NATO is pretty much US. And US can't make any... US is so behind on weapon production and weapon technology. Have you seen Russia testing the new nuclear armed missiles that could literally fly around the above, like over here in the Atlantic Ocean, and they're not detectable? They can just fly around right here. They have yeah, hold on. Let's go to in the video description. In the video description, I have YouTube channels you really want to pay attention to. One of them actually tells you what is happening in Russia. That's this channel. This is in English. And there was a report on the new Russian missile technology. Here it is. I actually don't know how to play the audio through Restream. So you can watch this video, and it describes a Russian latest missile that they were just testing. This is this is basically what it can do. They are nuclear powered, like submarines are nuclear powered. So they could float around like submarines underwater. I don't know for how long, but for a long time. Days, weeks, months. They're undetectable by radar. And that's what these missiles can do. So you may want to watch this. This is now in circulation as a Russian weapon. It was really, really interesting video. You may want to check that out. Well, Russia cares about their civilians. They kind of care about Ukrainian civilians. I guarantee you Russia couldn't care less about Finnish civilians. Guys, the US military is still too busy trying to figure out what gender their generals are. I really don't have much confidence in the US military. The US generals are also too busy, getting sweetheart deals in the private sector once they get out. The US military is insanely corrupt. The problem with the US military is that they're not actually interested in military. The top generals are more interested in how much money they're going to make once they're out of the military. Russian economy is bad. Their stock market is dropping. We can glance at their stock market, actually. I have not looked at the Russian stock market in a long time. Oh, but I keep trying to go to the right area. Let's see. Yeah, the Russian stock market isn't doing very great. But remember, Russian companies are sanctioned. They can't do business with the West. So it's going to take a while for the Russian stock market to recover because the West needs to completely collapse. And Russian economy is growing. All right, my moderators, can you send me some questions? The Ukraine Nazis are more about being anti-Russian than anti-Jew. I mean, you can listen to what they say, right? That's again, you won't hear the audio, but you can read the video. At the moment, they're very anti-Russia, but here, if you go to this document, and you go to the Nazi section, there's a playlist here. I put a playlist together. Here it is. So here's a playlist. I don't know how many of these videos will continue to be around, but this is Time Magazine. There was one that was great. He was like, we don't want to be like Hitler. Well, actually, we kind of want to be like Hitler. I got to get the part here. Where was that? I think it was in this video. Trying to find it. Maybe it was this. Oh, man. Where was that? Maybe it was BBC. I'll recognize him. Hey, here it is. You guys won't be able to hear the audio. I don't think you can hear the audio. You read the subtitles. Listen to the subtitles. Read the subtitles. By the way, he's speaking in Russian. He's not speaking in Ukrainian. So I understand what he's saying. And the translation is accurate. Just read the subtitles. National Socialist was Hitler's political party in Nazi Germany. It was called the National Socialists. Right. So he says not like Hitler, but he's like, but a little bit like Hitler. This was by BBC, so you can't say this is Russian propaganda. This was by BBC, and this was posted 11 years ago, right? So this is from 2014, and this is in East Ukraine. So you can watch this playlist. I took some time to put this together, and most of this is Western media back when they were covering this topic. They don't like the Jews, they don't like black people, they don't like anyone that isn't pure race, but there are priorities, and at the moment Russians are at the top of the list. Tone, even though Trump is crazy, what do you think about his approach regarding Russia Ukraine? Great question. Great question. So Trump has no ability to alter anything in regards to Russia, Ukraine. If you want to know why Trump has zero ability to alter anything regarding Russia, Ukraine, the best person to explain it is, let me go back to my video, is Brian Berletic of the New Atlas. That would be right here, the New Atlas. So he is a former Marine, U.S. Marine, living in Asia, and he does the best job explaining why Trump has no ability to broker peace between Russia and Ukraine. And he was explaining this while Trump was running for president. So, and he said, nothing will change in terms of Russia, Ukraine. And he was one of the few people that turned out to be 100% right. And the reason he said that, and he covered it, continuity of agenda. Like any video that says continuity of agenda, this is him explaining why Trump would not do anything to prevent the Russia-Ukraine conflict from escalating and escalating and escalating. But here's the reason. I pinned this reason here at the end, right here. There is this document called Extending Russia. It's a PDF, which you could download and open. I have it. I can open it. 1 second. But I don't really need to open it, but you can download it for free. It's basically like a research paper by Rand Corporation, which is a U.S. think tank, written in 2019, published in 2019, written in 2018. And it talks about this. The document is called Extending Russia. And let me zoom in. Right here. And it says all the things that the United States needs to do in order to break Russia apart. This was written in 2019, and here is the list. Okay, so economic measures and geopolitical measures. Economic measures: hinder petroleum exports. This is in the process, right? They have completely shut Russia down from exporting any oil or natural gas to the Western countries, but they are unable to stop Russia from exporting their gas to the East, to like India and China. But measure number one, prevent Russia from making money off of petroleum resources. Measure number two, petroleum is just oil. Measure number two, reduce natural gas, right? They blew up the pipeline to Europe. But Europe is still getting Russian petroleum through India, but they're trying to put a stop to it now. Measure number three, impose sanctions. Well, that's been tried to death. Russia's still alive. They haven't broken up Russia yet. Enhance Russian brain drain. This is actually really bad. So this is what happens when Russia first invaded Ukraine. So many Russians fled the country. Russia experienced a massive brain drain when Russia was collapsing in 1991. I mean, if you consider me smart, I was part of that brain drain, right? I left the Soviet Union in 1989, right before communism fell. That's a brain drain, right? So anyone smart, any engineer, any doctor, anyone smart working in the West that is Russian, that's a brain drain from Russia. You, as a country, want to retain the smartest people in your population. The doctors, the engineers, the entrepreneurs. You want them to build and keep their careers in Russia to spend money in Russia. So a brain drain happened when Russia invaded Ukraine. Remember, America doesn't give a shit about Ukraine. They just want Russia to die. They want Russia to fall apart. And if Russia has a brain drain by Russians fleeing Russia because they disagree with Russia entering Ukraine, then measure 4 has been achieved. It doesn't matter if every Ukrainian baby dies in the process. If there is a Russian brain drain happening and smart entrepreneurs leave Russia and start businesses elsewhere, number 4 gets a check. That's what America wants. America isn't interested in saving Ukrainian lives or Finnish lives or any lives. Shit. I don't think America gives a shit about saving American lives. If you're an American and you die, if you're in America and you happen to be bulldozed over, in Israel, America is not going to care about your life. Your life is irrelevant in many cases, even as an American to America. Like they won't even mention it in the news, right? So if you think American government cares about, I think any government cares about its citizens, barely, right? But America cares a lot that Russia experiences a brain drain. So anything that can cause Russians to flee Russia and become productive elsewhere is good for America and bad for Russia. Then the next chapter says geopolitical measures. Provide lethal aid to Ukraine. Why do they want to provide lethal aid to Ukraine? It's not to save Ukrainian lives. It is to extend Russia, make Russia break it apart. When the Soviet Union went from one country to 15 countries, America felt that the Russia part was still way too big, and Russia needed to be broken up into 4 or 5 countries. And this is the research paper provided to the government of how to extend Russia to make Russia, a basket case on the global stage and make it an irrelevant country. Provide lethal aid to Ukraine, in an attempt to start a war on the Russian border with Ukraine. Increase support to the Syrian rebels. Again, Russia came in to stabilize Syria and help the Syrian government stay stable as a country. America was able to finally overthrow the Syrian government last year because Russia was stuck concentrating in Ukraine and they were not able to keep Syria together as a country. And now Syria is controlled by a former head chopper from Al-Qaeda. And if you think things are better in Syria now, you are a complete brainwashed fool, because things in Syria are not better now under an Al-Qaeda head chopper in charge versus Bashar al-Assad, who was the former guy in charge. Promote regime change in Belarus. This completely failed, and Lukashenko has control of the country. Now, we can debate whether a regime change overthrow in Belarus would have been good for the country of Belarus. But had that happened in Belarus, it's possible Russia would also be right now fighting a war with Belarus the way they are fighting a war in Ukraine, right? because what America tried to do in Belarus is what they achieved in Ukraine in 2014. And look at Ukraine now. How did that overthrow of a democratically elected president in Ukraine make Ukraine better and safer? Look at what's happening in Ukraine. They wanted to create the same thing in Belarus, not because America cares about the Belarusians. Belarusians are even closer to Russians in ancestry than the Ukrainians. Okay, so creating the same, turning Belarus into the next Ukraine was certainly not going to be to the advantage of the Belarusian people, though many of them have been led to believe that it's better for them to be at war with Russia instead of their current situation. Exploit tensions in the South Caucasus. This is Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan, and they almost turned Georgia into Ukraine, but in 2008, Russia came in, killed every Georgian military, and the current government of Georgia is doing their best to kick all the American propagandists out of Georgia, because Georgia doesn't want Russia to basically come in and fight them as well. Once again, America does not care about the lives of Georgians or Armenians or Azerbaijanis. They just want war on Russian border. So if they could convince the populations of these countries that it's better for those populations to be at war with Russia versus friends with Russia, the goal has been achieved. And this is in progress. I'm not going to talk about Armenia right now. That's a giant mess. And they turned Georgia into a mess, but Georgia is doing their best to kick out American NGOs, which are controlled by the CIA. By the way, Elon Musk, actually, people think that Elon Musk, I should probably put these on because it's getting late. People think that Elon Musk ended USAID. He did not. Elon Musk actually made it worse. It's possible that Elon Musk quit because he realized he was being used as a tool to centralize USAID. So Brian Berlitic explains this as well. So prior to Elon Musk eliminating USAID, all of these NGOs like George Soros and Endowment for Democracy, all of these like CIA fronts, they had to have transparency as to how they're using government money to create these regime changes. And American deep state didn't like the fact that USAID was so transparent. So they brought in Elon Musk to eliminate USAID, but in reality, equally as much money, if not more so, is being allocated to regime changes through NGOs. Only now, because US aid was shut down, they get to do it without any transparency. So all Elon Musk did was remove the transparency from NGOs creating regime change. Now they can do it covertly the way they used to do it 30, 40 years ago when the government kind of made it more transparent, but now they're going back to the way they used to do it. So Elon Musk actually made things worse, but it's not surprising. It's the US government. Reduce Russian influence in Central Asia. This is completely failing. Central Asia is countries like Kazakhstan. US tried to create a regime change in Kazakhstan, and the Kazakhstan government, along with the help from the Russian government, squashed that very, very quickly. Challenge Russian presence in Moldova. This is ongoing. There was an election in Moldova. A pro-Western leader was elected in Moldova. And once Russia creates a land bridge to the Moldovan border, right here to Transnistria, this is a part of Moldova that doesn't want to be Moldova. They want to be Russia. And eventually Russia will make a land bridge. And once they meet this zone, there will be some. I mean, the U.S. is ready to turn Moldova into the next Ukraine if these regions fall. Again, the U.S. doesn't care about Moldovan lives. They will be more than happy to sacrifice every baby in Moldova as long as they can be at war with Russia, because when Russia is involved in wars on their border, they can't do things like keep the Syrian government stable and prevent U.S. and Israel from turning Syria into, a dysfunctional country run by a former Al Qaeda head chopper. Well, it was guys. It's okay. I gotta show this comment. I'm shocked by tone. He's gone too far into conspiracy theories. Is USA transparent? Don't make me laugh. It was more transparent than it is now. It's all relative, right? USAID was transparent enough for the US government to be bothered by the transparency of USAID. Hence, the whatever transparency there was of USAID, let's say USAID was 10% transparent. That was clearly too much and it needed to be removed. And Elon Musk was the tool for the job to remove whatever transparency USAID had. It's all relative. All right. I kind of went down the rabbit hole here on a question. I think the question was about Trump. What was the question? Right. So, I didn't go on a tangent, but I'm going to finish this up. This was written in a paper in 2019, and everything in this paper continues to play out. Trump is powerless to stop this. Trump has no ability to stop what is written in this paper. Everything written in this paper is happening, would be happening, whether the president is Trump or Mother Teresa, or if the president was Ron Paul. I am now convinced that even Ron Paul as president would not be able to stop what was written in this paper. Not Thomas Massie, none of them. It does not matter. The US president does not matter when it comes to things like this. It is the American government's position to break up Russia. And no president, no human being will be powerful enough to stop it. And they thought Trump may stop it, hence the assassination attempts. Or he's just being blackmailed by the Epstein list. I have no idea, right? But there's nothing Trump can do to stop this. Russian invasion of Ukraine was the outcome of this. The United States wanted Russia to invade Ukraine in order to extend Russia. Hence, in 2019, it's written, there's a whole chapter. You can read it. It is, 7 pages about providing lethal aid to Ukraine. They're not providing lethal aid to Ukraine to help Ukraine. They're providing lethal aid to Ukraine so they can go to war with Ukraine. Ukraine even said that they want a war with Russia. It's right here. Literally, it's right here. You can listen to it. Again, you're not going to hear the audio. This is Zelensky's top advisor as Zelensky is running for president. This is from 2019. There is a YouTube video right here as well. The full interview. Okay. This is a clip from that interview. This is short. You can read the subtitles. He's also speaking in Russian. He's not speaking in Ukrainian. Okay, so I can validate this is an accurate translation because I understand what he's saying. So Russia can go to direct confrontation with NATO. He says, no, not with NATO. We're not going to make it. Right. He's like, Russia will have to invade Ukraine before Ukraine can join NATO. So this is where he's completely wrong, but I'll mention it after. Right. So here is Zelensky's top advisor when Zelensky is running for president, stating in an interview right here, of course, a big war with Russia would be better, right? Because he said, either if we don't join NATO, Russia will take us over in 10 to 12 years. There is zero evidence of this. Over the prior 10 plus years, Ukraine has been getting closer and closer to Europe, and there was no indication that Russia was going to attack Ukraine. But he says Russia will take us over in 10 to 12 years unless we join NATO. But if we're going to join NATO, Russia is going to attack us with a full war. And the interviewer says, well, what's better? And he says, of course, a big war with Russia is better because then we will join NATO after we have a victory against Russia in a war. This is Zelensky's top advisor. And then he says, and now let's go and elect Zelensky. And when he's asked, when is the war going to start? And he says, somewhere between 2020 and 2022. Okay. Again, this is the signs were there that Ukraine wanted to go to war with Russia. I don't know why. Clearly, it ain't working out for him. But Zelensky's top advisor said that a war with Russia would be better. That was his conclusion because for some delusional reason, he thought that Russia would absorb Ukraine in 10 to 12 years. But from what I've seen, by going to Ukraine a bunch of times, Ukraine was going towards the West. Ukraine was potentially going to join European Union. And that's not enough. Russia would not have invaded Ukraine for joining the European Union. But now the line between European Union and NATO has kind of blended together. I mean, everything is explained in this document as to the root causes of the Russia-Ukraine crisis. And there is nothing Trump will be able to do about it, or the next president, whoever that is. All right, next question. So what's your conclusion? Ukraine should give up to Russia because they speak Russian? I mean, no, Ukraine doesn't have to give up to Russia. They could just, they could fight till the last Ukrainian baby is born. I mean, it's really up to the Ukrainian people. I'm not making decisions for Ukrainians, right? But if they continue on this path, there will be no Ukraine. It just won't exist. But no, they don't have to agree to Russian terms. They don't. But again, they can fight till the last Ukrainian baby. That's the reality of the situation. Have you seen the blue dogs in Chernobyl? No, I didn't see any blue dogs. I saw dogs in Chernobyl. I've been to Chernobyl, by the way. I've been to Chernobyl. I was in Chernobyl in 2018. I think it was 2018 I was in Chernobyl. There's a huge gas field found in the area Russia is interested in. Also why EU wants Ukraine. Well, the whole gas thing is explained in the last section. That is the biggest rabbit hole on this whole document. The biggest rabbit hole to go down is the Leviathan gas field. This is a real rabbit hole to go down. You may want to read this part carefully. Tone, why would it not interest Russia to take back their once capital city of Kiev? It interests them a little bit. It's a tough question for people to understand. Russia is more interested in taking regions where it's going to be where there won't be a future civil war in those regions. Okay, taking over a region where the population living in that region hates the fact that you took it over is a problem. As long as Russia sticks to the regions in East Ukraine, they're not going to have a hostile population living in these regions. But taking over Kiev is difficult because they will always have a population inside Kiev that would hate Russia. And they don't want the reverse of the situation, right? So the whole reason why this started is because when a democratically elected president was overthrown in Ukraine, the east part of Ukraine that was voting for this president wanted independence because they didn't want to be ruled by a federal government that hates their guts, right? And Russia doesn't want to rule over people that hate their guts. Again, this is why communism eventually fell, and that's why Soviet Union became 15 countries. It's very, very difficult. Colonialism is over, right? This is why Israel is struggling to, get rid of the Palestinians, because you have a population that hates the fact that they are, being ruled by, a federal government. Yes, there's a divide between Republicans and Democrats, but it's not to this sort of level. So Russia does, in my opinion, Russia doesn't want to take over any regions where the population is going to be unreasonably hostile to the federal government, like unreasonably hostile to the point of like terrorist attacks hostile. Like, as much as the Democrats and Republicans hate each other, like, people aren't, Democrats aren't doing terrorist attacks against Republicans, and Republicans aren't doing terrorist attacks against the Democrats. We're not at that stage yet. But ruling over a region that hates you to the point of, putting on suicide vests and blowing up, government buildings, you don't want that. So that is the main reason why Russia will save managing Kiev, will save it till the last final straw and the last resort. It's not to their advantage. Next question. Oh yeah, the Russian stock market. We took a look. What about Yevgeny Prigozhin? He was the leader of a private army that somehow that turned against Putin, and he died in a plane crash. I have no idea if that plane crashed of, you know, accidentally, or he was taken out. And if he was taken out, it didn't have to be Putin that took him out. He had plenty of enemies that could have taken him out. So we don't know what happened to his plane. But what about Prigozhin? He tried a coup on Moscow and failed. Trump is the best available right now. He's not the best, but perhaps the worst Republican. I think Trump's been a terrible president. I did a whole did I do a whole video about that? I think I did a whole video about that. I think at this point, Kamala might have been the better choice. Not for Bitcoin, but because if Kamala was president, would be a lot closer to splitting America into multiple countries, which I think would actually be not a bad thing. I know I'll be an immediate citizen of one of the more conservative states. No, they're not great friends in space anymore either. I think that the friendly joint space thing is going to end. Tone, in your opinion, what is the best thing the Western and the rest of the world can do about this war? Should the West completely withdraw until Ukraine and Russia somehow reach an agreement? If the West withdraws, the Russia and Ukraine will reach an agreement the next day because the Ukrainian army will completely collapse. So, you want my opinion, or you want me to... look, I have my opinions, and then I have realities of the situation and what I think is going to happen. What I want to happen and what I think is going to happen are two completely different things. What I told you what I think is going to happen. I think Russia is taking like 40% of Ukraine. What should happen? The US should immediately stop sending any weapons to Ukraine. They should announce Ukraine will never join NATO. And Ukraine needs to immediately agree to every single Russian term Russia has, because the deal will never be as good. I said this on the second week of the war, the second week after Russia invaded. You can go back and find the videos. 2 weeks, like within 2 weeks after Russia invaded Ukraine, I said Ukraine needs to immediately agree to every Russian term because the deal will never be as good. And then a year later, the deal was worse for Ukraine. And a year after that, the deal was worse for Ukraine. And right now, the deal is worse for Ukraine. And next week, the deal is going to be even worse for Ukraine. So again, Ukraine can fight till the last Ukrainian baby, but they'll never get as good of a deal as the current deal on the table. And the current deal on the table, Ukraine removes all of its military from the 4 regions, agrees to completely demilitarize, kicks all Western, NATO, Russian military, anything out of their country, and has a new election, a new fair election. And that election could be overseen by both Russia and a trusted Western country, where they have one, at every polling station, there would be a Russian and an American, or a Russian and a Brit, and a Russian and someone else, to make sure it's a fair election. And let's see who Ukraine elects. And I guarantee you, the person Ukraine will elect is going to be someone that's actually going to want to not aggravate Russia again so that Russia doesn't invade again. They will elect someone that's going to be friendly to Russia, because that is in the best interest of every Ukrainian that wants to continue living in Ukraine and remain alive. That is the interest of, that should be the interest of everyone. But there is zero chance that's going to happen. America is going to keep pumping weapons into Ukraine because America is more interested in the destruction of Ukraine to keep Russia involved in Ukraine, because the more time and energy Russia spends in the Ukraine war, the less, Russia could make deals and influence other countries and become more prosperous. So, again, it's the brain drain, it's the lost lives, it's people getting upset. By the way, for every person that is angry that Russia entered the war in the first place, there's at least one person that kind of wants Russia to just nuke Kiev and be done with the whole war. So it's 50-50, right? For maybe not nuke, but use the areshniks. Nukes are unpopular right now. For every person that doesn't want any Russians on any territory of Ukraine, there is at least one Russian that wants this war over with in the opposite direction by sending every missile in Russian arsenal and just wipe Kiev off the face of the earth in order to say enough is enough, kind of like what America did in Japan, but without the nuclear component. Joseph Samuel, thank you for your donation. Looks like Indian rupees. I remember an interview in the program of Max Kaiser. They were talking about how the West will respond wild if the collapse, and how China, Russia were prepared for this. I'm not sure that's a question, but it's a statement. Oh no, you should have both. So that's what I want to happen. What I want to happen is the same thing I wanted to happen from the day this started. I've been saying the same thing. Ukraine needs to immediately agree to all Russian terms, and they need to kick the American propagandists out of their country the way Georgia is trying to do. That would have saved 1 million Ukrainian lives and at least 10 million people from exiting Ukraine on a brain drain, which also benefits the United States, right? Because remember, half of the Ukrainians that fled Ukraine left to the West. And if Ukraine becomes very friendly with Russia, these Ukrainian entrepreneurs would be benefiting the Russian economy. But instead, they're benefiting other economies. Well, the smart ones are anyway. There's lots of poor refugees as well. They're not benefiting other economies. They're draining their economies, which is why immigration, the U.S. has benefited from immigration because they keep stealing the smartest people from foreign countries. But that's ending. Some of the smartest Chinese are going back to China. Some of the smartest Indians are going back to India. A lot of people are just going back to their countries. So the U.S. isn't benefiting from a brain drain the way they used to in the past. All right. I kind of missed a lot of your chat. Russia has 3 decades to make their country rich and prosperous, but instead they have an economy the same as Mexico. I mean, how do you measure an economy? How do you measure an economy, right? You're measuring an economy by Western standards. That is a dumb way to measure an economy. Russia is pretty self-sustained. Russia can feed itself. Russia can build their own technology. Russia is now they already started building airplanes. America can't do shit without the Chinese, what do you call them? Rare earth metals. Trump put his tail between his legs the way I said he would, flew to China, was playing second fiddle to Xi, and then came back to America with his tail between his legs, saying we're not going to sanction China no more. And that's why the U.S. stock market went up, like I said it would, because Trump was going to backpedal on the Chinese sanctions. Okay, America needs China more than China needs America, and Russia is pretty self-sustained. America also can't do shit without the Russian fertilizer, right? That gets back channeled into America. America can't do shit without Russian uranium. So saying that Russia has, like their economy is weak compared to what, right? America, half of American economy is finance and paper dollars and, Facebook, social media. And America has the ability to feed itself. Well, if they can learn how to make fertilizer, maybe. Right? Russia is cut off from the world, and they're doing okay. So it depends how you measure economies. Will a technical nuclear weapon strike? I don't think so. I think Russia now has the weapons that create the same amount of damage as a nuclear weapon would. They can do it without the nuclear component. So I'm not expecting a nuclear hit because it's not necessary anymore. Like Russia has enough weapons to do the damage it needs without the nuke component. The nuke component would only be necessary as a statement, kind of like you nuke a place and then you say, are you ready to destroy the planet? Because we are. So stand down. I mean, that's really the only reason for using it. West is not the world. The West thinks it's the world. Yeah, NATO is not a defensive alliance. They were bombing the shit out of Yugoslavia. Anyone that thinks NATO is a defensive alliance is a brainwashed fool. They're an offensive alliance. You guys, you got to make your questions more clear. The dude says, I thought the original goal was to liberate the Ukrainians from the Nazis in Kiev. Well, if you have your own opinion of the goal, then that's your opinion, right? I didn't think that. I know that's not the reason. If you're convinced that the reason why Russia went into Ukraine was to free the Ukrainians from the Nazis, then who's the fool? If that's what you thought, then well, you're wrong. So if that's been your belief the whole time, what do you want me to tell you? It's I mean, in my document, I attribute maybe 5% of the reason. I mean, if you think 5% means 500%, then that's you reading numbers incorrectly. I'm dyslexic when it comes to reading. Maybe you're dyslexic when it comes to looking at numbers. I have no idea, right? I love it when you say 5% and you're like, that's the reason. No, that's a minor reason, but it's there is a Nazi problem in Ukraine. Clearly not why Russia invaded Ukraine. That's what Putin said. Yeah, but he said 100 other things too, right? Did he say that's the only reason? He obviously didn't say that's the only reason. It's a reason. I mean, if someone gives you 10 reasons for something and you decide to randomly pick one of them and assume it's the only one, then that's your problem, right? How come I'm not seeing all of the comments? So veterans cannabis advocacy. I don't see your comment in the YouTube chat, but it comes through the Restream chat. So here's a comment that did not show up in the YouTube chat. So YouTube is censoring your comment. I'm not censoring your comment. YouTube is censoring your comment. The military Mockingbird Mayhem Matrix has got you. Wake up, you're being hypnotized. You're talking to some of my viewers or me? I'm assuming you're not talking to me. I'm assuming you're talking to my viewers. But your comment was censored by YouTube. Just so you know. That wasn't me. Crypto Liberty is back. What are my thoughts on Bitcoin? Watch my other YouTube channel. Not my channel, but watch the other YouTube channel that I'm on. British Intel, total Russian losses, killed and wounded, approximately 900. I think that's an overestimate. So, in my opinion, killed and wounded 900,000 is probably a little high. I would put that closer to 500,000, but that's just my guess. Ukrainians are definitely over 1 million, maybe even over 1.5 million by now. All right, guys, it's almost 9 p.m. By the way, if you really want to know what Putin says, if you want to know from the horse's mouth what Putin says, instead of, listening to the Western media of what Putin says, all you have to do is follow this YouTube channel right here. It's called Russian News. They translate it into English, and they translate a lot of Putin's speeches. They translate it into English for you. Here's a 30-minute one of Putin and the president of Belarus, Lukashenko, and you can hear exactly what he says. These translations are accurate. Like, here is their latest video on the last thing that Putin says. Here it is. So you can listen to him. You don't have to rely on the Western media to know what Putin says. This is translated into English for you. It's dubbed into English. When am I going to go back to Russia? Probably never. I live in Latin America. Again, you guys are confusing a reality on the ground with, like some. I don't know why you think I want to go live in Russia. I have no interest in living in Russia. Am I open to a debate on YouTube about the cause of the Russian-Ukrainian war with a public figure with a comparable number of subscribers? Yeah, probably. I don't see why not. I don't see how these. I don't see how this document is debatable. I don't see how this document is debatable. I mean, my prerequisite for the debate would be that whoever I'm debating reads this. Like if someone wants to debate me, they have to read this. And then they have to debate me on this and, debate me on anything here. Like, I'm happy to do it. Someone wants to read these 20 pages and then debate me on it? Sure. Took me a year to write this. I'll defend this document. Good luck. If I had to pick a country to permanently live in the rest of my life, what would it be? That's a hard question, right? Because that's a really hard question. Because after the pandemic, everything changed. I don't know. I would probably just live on a Caribbean island somewhere. Like if shit hits the fan, I can always, go spear fishing. So that's a hard question. I'm going to have to say, well, ask me again in 30 days. And the reason why I say ask me in 30 days is because there is an election going to happen in Honduras. And it's a very important election because I am considering setting up a home in Roatan, Honduras. And if you want to know why, you need to watch. I should make the playlist public. Like, I'm looking for my first video on Honduras. Where is it? Man, it was a while ago. Huh? Shit. Can't find the first video, but if you go to any of my Honduras videos, this was my second video. Can't seem to find the first one. There is a playlist in here. Learn more about Prosperous on our websites. Here, this playlist. And the first video of this playlist is what is Prosperous. So, but I really need to know how the election goes at the end of this month. If the election goes in a beneficial direction, I'll probably be moving out here. So if you want to know why, this is my new go-to place. I'll throw I'll throw the playlist in the video description. There it is. So I'd live here. It's beautiful. Nice and peaceful. Well, I'm half Ukrainian, half Russian, guys. But I'm too old to speak Ukrainian. Because no one spoke Ukrainian back then. So I only speak Russian. Like, everyone my age, like you had to like learn Ukrainian when you were older because, because of the politics in Ukraine. And I wasn't already there, right? Like I left the Soviet Union before Ukraine was a country. I can go get my Ukrainian passport if I want. I was actually in the Ukrainian embassy considering getting a Ukrainian passport. This is before the pandemic and before it was before the pandemic and it was before the conflict, obviously. I'm still eligible for a Ukrainian passport. Actually, shit, I may not be eligible for a Ukrainian passport anymore. It's complicated, but I was eligible for a Ukrainian passport. Well, obviously, I'm not eligible now because if they watch my YouTube channel, I'll probably be arrested and shot. But oh yeah, Tanzania. I went to Tanzania during the pandemic because I wanted a free country that didn't have any crazy restrictions. It sucks what's happening in Tanzania. Oh, I was a refugee. I was a refugee immigrant from the Soviet Union to America. All right, guys, it's time to wrap this up. Did I miss anything? Oh, yeah, I can do a whole show about Venezuela. That's a whole other. I mean, the U.S. is going to flex its military muscle by attacking Venezuela. Let's see if they're successful there. I doubt it. Like I said, I'd consider a debate, but I'd only consider a debate from someone that would read that document. I don't really care what the style of the debate would be. As long as it's, as long as there is a very qualified moderator. Best way to contact me is on Telegram. Though I probably shouldn't have said that. I'll reply to a comment on this video and or reply to the tweet. Like my DMs aren't open. Just this is going to be on Twitter as a video. Like reply there, mention the debate. Mavio Avio. I'll remember you. Do you have a YouTube channel? Is it your YouTube channel? Go to channel. Let me see. Okay, so it's not on your YouTube channel. You don't have any content. All right, guys. Thank you all for watching. That was an update. I know people think I'm a Russian shill, but I've been saying the same thing for 3 fucking years. Russia is going to take more and more land, and they're going to kill more and more Ukrainians, because what is happening in Ukraine is an existential threat for Russia. If Russia loses in Ukraine, there is no more Russia in the eyes of Russia. Your opinion doesn't matter. The only opinion that matters is the Kremlin's opinion, of which Putin is the main voice, but not the only voice. So if Russia feels losing in Ukraine is the death of their country, they will destroy the entire planet before that happens. This is why you don't pick fights with global superpowers, of which at the moment there are three, maybe three and a half if you count India. All right, guys, I'm cutting this off. Thank you all for watching. This channel is going to switch to doing health content in the near future. So hopefully this conflict ends. But the only way it's going to end, actually, I don't think it's going to end. I think this is going to go on for a decade. I don't see how this ends, because the West is not interested in saving any Ukrainian lives as long as it creates problems for Russia, right? So as I said 3 years ago, and I will continue to say, that I don't see this ending anytime soon. I don't. I really don't. The only way it ends is if the West stops all aid to Ukraine, and Ukraine then immediately agrees to Russian terms. That's not going to happen. So the conflict will go on and on and on until Russia takes 40% of the country. And then they'll make the rest of it completely dysfunctional, like what the U.S. does in, Middle East. All right. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all on the next one.